Very glad to see you. Hello. Nice to meet you.
How are you?
Nice to meet you.
Daniel Radcliffe is world famous as Harry Potter, star of the 8-part blockbuster movie series. And after numerous acclaimed film, TV and stage roles, he's one of the most popular and recognizable actors on the planet. Daniel's own childhood was nothing like the orphaned wizard boy he played in Harry Potter. He was brought up by his mum and dad in West London.
We're a very, tight-knit kind of unit as a family. My mum was a casting director and my dad was a literary agent after they finished their acting careers. So, plays and theatre was very much a part of growing up. But they definitely didn't, want me to become an actor. The reason I ended up going for an audition for something in the first place was just because, I was really not great at school. I think I felt very sort of mediocre when I got the Potter films. It changed the whole family's life, really.
Daniel was just 11 when he was catapulted to fame as Harry Potter. Over the next 10 years, he grew up alongside the fictional hero he played, becoming an icon for the generation who grew up watching him.
When I look back now, to get a kid through what happened to us with as much humour and calm as my parents did is very, I think very impressive. I have realised, how little I know about my family. As far as I know, on my dad's side, there were 4 brothers who sort of, I think, all fought in the First World War. On my mum's side, my great-grandmother was Ray, and there was English, but of Eastern European Jewish extraction, I think. Actually, I'm not sure I can even remember the name of my great-grandfather on that side. I want to say Phil, but that's not right. So yeah, this is what I mean. This is very embarrassing. I know that he ran a jewellery shop, and then there was a robbery. Then I think he took his own life. So yeah, that's the little bit that I know about the family. If I can find out anything about other people in our ancestry, and if there are any parts of them that I feel are echoed in either me or in my parents, I think that's what I'm going to find the most sort of exciting. So this is a note from my mum. Hi Dan, here are a few things I dug out to get you started. Granny Pat's photo album and the family tree she drew just before you were born. You're the bump. Loads of love, Mummy. This is a photo of my great-grandmother Ray with my mum's mum, Granny Pat, who is just got a... It looks like somebody's put a punk into a Victorian child's dress, because she's just got this baby mohawk. You really can tell that it's Granny Pat. And assume that is Ray and my grandmother again. That's a very nice photo of Ray. She's smiling in that one. I remember, certainly towards the end of her life, she lived with my mum and grandmother, and they all lived together. All right. Oh, wow. Granny Pat. She has, she has, in a very dramatic way, has titled this The Gershon Dynasty, which is, maybe putting it a bit strongly. Okay. So yeah, there's me, Bump. And then Alan and Marcia, my parents. And then the previous generation was Pat Gresham. But that isn't anglicised version of the much more Jewish name Gershon. Or maybe it was just my grandmother's decision to change her name, but I wonder when that switch happened. And then going back just one generation, we get Ray Jacobs, my great-grandmother, who married Samuel. He took his own life, who apparently was one of 9 children. And wow, he was the first one to be born in England, which is definitely a surprise. All these 9 children are the children of Jesse Greenwell and Louis Gershon, my great-great-grandparents. But it says Jesse Greenwell married Louis Gershon, brackets, in South Africa. I had always assumed that going back that far, we would be from Eastern Europe, but this family tree very clearly says South Africa. So this was made 30 years ago, and anyone underlined in red was still alive at the time. Still here, not dead yet. So there's probably some living relatives who could help out.
Daniel's in North London, on his way to meet a descendant of his great-great-grandparents, Jesse Greenwell and Louis Gershon, who's also called Louis Gershon.
I'm just fascinated by the fact that I have a relative that I didn't know existed. Hopefully, modern-day Louis Gershon will have a lot more information about the family and maybe what the full story is about South Africa.
Hi, Daniel. Louis Gershon.
Hello, Louis.
Come in.
Thank you very much. Did you know that we were related?
Absolutely not.
All right, so I have been given this family tree, which was drawn up by my grandmother. So, Louis, if I can ask, where do you fit in on all this tree?
So, my dad, he was the youngest of the 9 siblings. Bobby married Hannah, and they had one son who was nameless, but it's me.
It's you. Yeah.
Louis Gershon.
My grandmother would be your first cousin.
Yep.
So what do you know about your grandfather, my great-great-grandfather, Louis Gershon?
Well, what was in my flat where I grew up all my life was a picture of Louis Gershon. And I'm now going to show you Louis Gershon.
Oh, wow.
Now, if you look at Louis Gershon and you look at Daniel Radcliffe,
Yeah.
there is not
It's
much
not-
difference. That's
It's
a
not a million
Gershon
miles
face.
away.
You look more like him than I do, and I'm named after him. Look at you. It's the same bloody face.
Just need to shave the rest of it off.
You need to tidy up a bit,
Yeah,
Daniel,
really.
but apart from that, you're all right. But look at that, and look, it's amazing.
That's incredible. Sorry, let me just have another. I mean, around the eyes and the eyebrows. That's where I get them from. That's really remarkable. Is there anything else you can tell me about Louis? Because I on the tree, all I know is that he met or married Jesse Greenwell in South Africa. It says, but that is all I know.
Right. There is a census in the early 1900s, which you must have a look at.
Okay. It's 1901. Hackney.
Although it was Hackney, it was probably a bit more Stamford Hill, which was quite posh in those days.
Oh, right. Okay. Wow.
There is one very interesting thing here. If you look where people were born...
Where everyone was born here, and then Louis... Huh. Yeah, so apparently Louis Gershon was born in Germany. I had it in my history that we were from Russia, and obviously... And then it says Jessie, Louis's wife, was born in Russia.
Correct.
Wow.
And then look down. Their children.
John was born in Cape Town. So Anne was born in Kimberley. And then Julie was born in
the Orange Free State.
What was their activity out there in South Africa?
Well, he was something in diamonds, and that's what was going on there in South Africa.
Okay, wow.
Daniel's great-great-grandfather, Louis Gershon, was one of thousands of treasure hunters who flooded into the area around Kimberley, South Africa, in the late 1800s, after diamonds were discovered there. By the time of the 1901 census, Louis and his family had moved to London.
Then there he is, Samuel.
That's my great-granddad, Samuel. Age, as of last birthday, 7.
Yeah.
First born in the UK, so yeah, Cape Town, Kimberley, Orange Free State, Hackney. Wow. By this point, I'd from years working in diamonds in South Africa, Louis Gershon, then came back and became a dealer in jewellery. You can just about see it say there. Employer, worker, or own account. Own account. Thank you very much.
Means he owns his own business.
Right. Do you know anything more about the business?
Set up in Hatton Garden. But I think you should really have to take a trip to Hatton Garden to find out what's going on.
I think that sounds like a good idea.
In London's city centre, Hatton Garden is the historic home of the jewellery trade.
When I think about the life that Louis Gershon must have had, I mean, if you went from Germany to South Africa, then to up sticks again and move to London and set up in the jewellery business, there's a huge element of risk in that. I'd always had some awareness of a jewellery link in our family. I'd love to know more about that.
Just off the main street, Daniel's meeting Hatton Garden historian and author Rachel Lichtenstein.
Hi, Daniel. Lovely to meet you.
Lovely to meet you, Rachel.
By the kind of turn of the century, all the world's rough diamonds were coming here to Hatton Garden. So I've got a document here to show you, and this is dated 1905.
All right.
And you can see here diamond cutters, setters and workers.
Oh.
And see if you can find your
yes.
family name.
There's, Gershon and Shire.
So Gershon and Shire were then based at 35 Hatton Garden, and they would have been working in a little workshop, much like the one that we're going to visit here.
Daniel's meeting diamond mounter Stuart Rucker.
Daniel, come through.
Okay.
These are just a few things that I've been working on.
Wow. Has the technique for this changed much in the last 100 years since the great-great-granddad was doing it?
A lot of it is very similar. This is what he would have done, sort of traditional hand making with, tools, filing, shaping with hammers.
It's amazing the delicacy of what you produce with hammers and, and files.
It's mini engineering, really.
Right. Oh, wow, that's beautiful.
So, Daniel, I've got some more documents here that tell you about Louis Gershon in Hatton Garden in the industry.
1917, June 19th. A copy of Register of Directors or Managers of the African Wholesale Jewellers.
He's realised that if you start to import goods from elsewhere that are already made up, he can make a larger profit.
Oh, right. Clever Louis.
Yeah. If you have a look
Oh, right, yeah.
at how much the company is worth by that time,
That's
which is
£10,000.
£10,000, which is about equivalent to about £500,000.
Oh, wow.
In today's money. So he's doing really, really well.
Yeah, he is. I was wondering, do you know anything about the further involvement of my great-grandfather Sam?
If we move on to this document here.
And then here we have my great-granddad, Samuel, who is 17, jeweller's apprentice.
So just have a look at the next document.
Oh, wow. Certified copy of an entry of marriage. Samuel Gershon, aged 27 years. Diamond merchant. There you go.
He progressed.
Wow. Oh, he married Rachel Diner, known as Ray. I never knew her name was Rachel. I've always just been Ray. St Vincent's Road, Southend-on-Sea. And that's interesting as well. So this is, what year is this? 1921. By this point, Louis Gershon is now deceased. Yeah, that's sad. Well, this is amazing, and I'm so I suppose if I want to know more, I should probably go to Southend.
I think so.
I know what a point of pride the business must have been, because it was a business that had been really successful. Having seen on that last document that they ended up in Southend, I'm intrigued to know more about my great-grandmother and great-grandfather Sam.
In Southend, Daniel's meeting historian Alan Dean.
Oh, lovely to meet you.
Really good to meet you too.
Thank you so much for coming.
I've got some photographs, studio photographs taken in Southend of Sam and Ray.
Whoa.
They were taken in the late 1920s.
Okay. I've seen more photos of Ray, none of her at this age. But I don't remember ever seeing just a good close front-on shot of Samuel. That's amazing. It's funny to think I'm the same age as he is in this photo.
Yeah.
I do feel like a pipe probably does put a few years on you. So yeah, do you know why Samuel ended up coming out here?
Well, your great-grandmother Ray, her family were already here.
So the Jacobs came first and then the Gershons?
Absolutely.
Okay.
A year after getting married, in May 1922, Samuel and Ray had their first daughter, Patricia. 7 years later, they had another daughter, Luella.
Actually, hold on. My handy travel-sized family photo album. I think what I've got, there we go. So this picture, which must have been taken right after my grandmother was born, would have been taken here in Southend somewhere.
Yeah, that's Athol Lodge.
See, I assumed because it was the word lodge, I assumed it was a hotel or a bed and breakfast or something they were staying at, but that was they were living there permanently, were they?
And that's why people wanted to move here. Right. The grand homes,
Space, yeah.
the trees outside, and of course, the seafront.
Do you know how anything about sort of the business was still going at that point?
Yeah, sure. I've got a page from Kelly's post office directory here.
Right.
And if you find Hatton Garden...
22, there we go. Ah, now, yes, Gershon Brothers, manufacturing jewellers. That's interesting. So when is this from?
1930. So your great-grandfather
Yes.
was now in business with his brother
Yeah.
and commuting every day to work, to Hatton Garden.
I don't know what became of the business, but it seems to have been a sort of unqualified success so far. They seem really happy at the moment in terms of everything we've been hearing. There's no reason to suspect anything might be amiss, but you know, I know that at some point Samuel killed himself. I know there was a robbery, but yeah, I want to try and find out more about that and about him.
Daniel knows his great-grandfather's business, Gershon Brothers, was robbed sometime in the 1930s. Back in Hatton Garden, he's looking online to see if he can find out what happened.
Search. Night raid on jewellers. Safe ripped open. Missing. Yeah, I mean, it was like there was a heist. Made the papers up and down the country. February 1936. Jewels were stolen from a safe in the premises of Messrs. Gershon Brothers Jewellers in Hatton Gardens, EC, on Monday night. On the floor were crowbars and the safe had been cut open. Wow. The majority of missing articles are mounted jewellery such as rings, necklaces and brooches. It never sounded this dramatic when it was being recounted before. It was just like, oh yeah, some stuff was stolen, like there was a but there was nothing about like there being the papers being all over it, or you know, it being a team of people cutting open a safe. You know, that was news. I mean, I would love to find out what happened and if they ever caught anyone. This is a much bigger deal than I thought that it had been.
The robbery of Gershon Brothers was investigated by the police. To learn about the case, Daniel's meeting criminologist Dick Hobbs.
Lovely to meet you. 22.
Number 22. Let's have a look.
Lead the way. Thank you so much.
This is the scene of the crime.
Wow.
This is where it was. And up here is the actual office where your great-grandfather had his business. Gershon.
Unbelievable.
There it is. As you can see, it's a pretty small space. There's even a safe here.
Yeah.
As there would have been.
mad to think he was in this room almost 100 years ago.
You talk about a robbery that on today's money,
Yeah.
you're talking about a quarter of a million pound robbery. So this isn't, it's not petty crime.
That's a massive amount.
I've got the file here. But what's crucial when we look at this case is there's absolutely no evidence as to how the perpetrators got into the building. So there's no break-ins, there's no broken windows, there's no false doors outside. So that becomes an ongoing problem in the investigation of this particular crime. But if you look at the Hatton Garden heist of just a few years ago, just over the road, there was no sign of breaking and entering into that building either.
Right.
But this is the conclusion that the police came to.
Okay. There was every reason to believe that the allegation of office breaking and larceny was bogus and possibly put forward for the purposes of a fraudulent insurance claim. Under the circumstances, no crime was recorded. Wow.
The police have decided that this is a bogus robbery.
Yeah.
But they've not got enough evidence to take proceedings against the Gershons for fraud. From a police point of view, the Gershons had a bit of previous here, and you can see if you read.
Okay, yeah. An identical case of office breaking occurred at these premises on the night of 20th of March 1922. Property valued at £9,000 was stolen, and the claim was eventually settled. A further successful claim for £1,855 was made by Edward Gershon in 1932. So that would be Sam's brother, Edward. Right, so yeah, they've got a bit of history.
The Gershons have been in dispute with the insurance companies 3 times in a 15-year period.
Yeah. So the police were definitely suspicious that it could have been an inside job of some kind.
But it's worth pointing out that crime in Hatton Garden was not unusual.
Right.
But in terms of the way the police are dealing with the Gershons at this point, if you look at this piece, this paragraph here, I think it's from police informants.
Dear Sir, one hopes that the Criminal Investigation Department is taking into account the hypothesis that Gershon committed the robbery himself. General terms, that he is a Jew, and that Jews are so frequently responsible for the bringing down of their own business premises and thefts so-called committed in their offices. There's a lot to dig into in that one sentence. I guess it absolutely was the time, but it's also still very jarring to see him being a Jew to be taken as a piece of evidence in itself. Yeah.
But that might help to explain why the police had decided that it was bogus.
In 1930s Britain, as in the rest of Europe, hostility towards Jews was on the rise. Oswald Mosley's fascist party embraced an increasingly Nazi style of anti-Semitism. In 1936, the year of the Gershon robbery, this erupted into violence in London, when fascists clashed with anti-fascist demonstrators in what became known as the Battle of Cable Street.
My great-grandfather Sam, is there any news on what's happening to him in all this?
Well, here's a newspaper report featuring a photograph.
Whoa. Wow. That's an amazing photo. That's not in the family albums. Mr. Samuel Gershon fainted on learning that thieves had cut open a safe and stolen jewellery. Wow.
So the press photographer was there outside.
Yeah, that's right. There were photographers there on the day.
There's another article here which explains what's happened.
Oh, wow. Robbed jeweller too ill to talk. Mr. Samuel Gershon, jeweller and diamond expert, has been lying ill in his home. For 3 days, detectives have been waiting to interview Mr. Gershon, but he was still too ill to see the police.
I think one of the things that's worth saying here is that part of the context of the robbery was that the Gershons were already in debt for approximately the same amount of money that was stolen.
Right, funny that, yeah.
So if you're looking for a motive, that could be the motive, if that's what happened. But to hear that the police were not taking this seriously,
right,
and the suggestion that the insurance company weren't going to pay out, that's going to add to the pressure that Samuel was under.
Yeah. And especially because of the intense media scrutiny that was also now a factor in his life.
Yes. I mean, what do you think? Do you think that Sam was faking that when he fainted?
I mean, I suppose I worry because I know that Sam took his own life, and so that makes me wonder if that was, guilt. But by the same token, it could just have been that, once this is written about you and once there is this kind of speculation about you, he was probably going, my livelihood's over. That everything he's worked for and that his father had worked for as well has sort of been, destroyed pretty quickly, potentially.
His death was reported, and there may be something that you can look at to answer some of those questions.
Okay, yeah, I would definitely like to do that, because he's sort of still the one person that I feel like I've seen pictures of him and I've seen his signature, but I feel like his is the one voice that I haven't quite heard yet in all this. There are a lot of details around the robbery of my great-granddad's business that are a little bit suspect. No forced entry on the door, the amount of debt they were in, and the prior insurance claims over the last sort of 15 years. I tend to think that Sam and his brother, maybe together, decided to try and defraud the insurance company by staging a robbery. Clearly, the effect that this one had on him was not good. So yeah, I want to know more about that.
Daniel's great-grandfather, Samuel, died near Aldbury Common in Hertfordshire. To find out what happened, Daniel's come here to meet historian Alison Haggart.
Hi, Dan. Lovely to meet you.
You too.
And one of the things we found is the coroner officer's report, which details the basic details about his death. So.
Yes, thank you. When? Oh, sorry, yeah, 8th of July, right.
So that was about 5 months after the burglary.
After the robbery.
Yeah.
Named Samuel Gershon, died in a motor car on Aldbury Common at 7:40 p.m. If any known illness or injury existed before death, state, if possible, the nature of it and its duration. Was suffering from shock for about 14 days in February 1936. So I had heard that he had been unable to talk to the police for 3 days, but it's interesting to see it. Obviously, that state sort of lasted in some form for 14 days total.
And there was a witness statement from Samuel's brother, Edward.
Oh, right.
As you can see. It's very difficult to read,
yeah.
So we have done a transcript there for you.
Oh, great, thank you. Edward's witness statement. The diamond business had been burgled in February. There was a bankruptcy petition on the file against the firm, which has been held over a pending settlement of the insurance company. He has been very worried since February. He told his wife he had a meeting of his firm's creditors to attend. He was wonderfully happy at home. Then he signs. Wow. What is the bankruptcy petition? What does all that mean?
He will be waiting to see whether the insurance company is going to pay up.
Okay.
Otherwise, it might lead to bankruptcy.
Right, okay. Every single line is a bullet point of essential information, apart from he was wonderfully happy at home.
Yeah.
Which really stands out.
Very striking, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think, 1930s, a man would have been very much seen as a provider and a protector of his family. So anything that threatened that would have been, very, very stressful.
Yeah. I feel like it should make a difference to me whether he was innocent or guilty of this, but I still feel sorry for him just because he, you know, anyone in the wrong situation can get themselves feeling like they've been backed into a corner. And that's, you know, I find it hard to be angry at somebody for that.
We did find one other document in the report. There was actually a suicide note, which was found on the body in a handwritten notebook. So I don't know if you want to read that, but if you do, perhaps you'd want to go off and perhaps read it on your own.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I definitely do want to read it. Dole, darling, is how he starts the note. So that was his name for my great-grandmother. I cannot face bankruptcy after 22 years of trading, so I'm taking the coward's way out. But I can assure you, my angel... Oh. But I can assure you, my angel, to leave a girl like you is more than a wrench. I worship and adore you. The loveliest, truest, and noblest wife and companion and comforter you have been to me in my trouble. And it's so funny to feel this connection to somebody that you don't know, and just in how much he loves his wife. You know, the way he says things is not dissimilar to some things I would say, and things I might call people. You have given me 15 years of happiness in our married life, and we have been blessed with 2 darling girls. But I can't take worry, as you know. But I can't take worry, as you know, my love. And these last 5 months have pulled me down. You just want to sort of reach into the past and just go like, whatever you're going through, you have so much to offer the people who are around you still. They still would all have loved you. I don't want to go, but I'm afraid of the future. God keep you all well. Have no regrets. You have been more than marvellous. I love you, darling. Don't fret or grieve, but just give me a thought sometimes. Your loving and heartbroken husband, Nukes. Which I suppose is his nickname. It's so sad that it was just like, you know, everything in one part of his life was great. He seemed so happy. He really does seem so happy at home. And it's so sad that whatever was going on in the other half of his life has completely overwhelmed that. And talking about worry, like, you know, I worry a lot, and I have, you know, I sort of have a lot of anxiety and can really get lost in that sometimes, and it's just sad to think of that getting so bad for him that he had to do this. But the overwhelming sense of anything is just like how much he loved Ray. All I can think of now is like what this would have done to Ray and Pat, my grandmother.
To find out what happened after Samuel's death, Daniel has come back to Southend to meet Alan Dean again.
I've got some documents that I think it's important for you to see. This one here is from the Daily Express.
Oh, right. Robbed jewel man, dead in car, diary note to wife.
At this time, 1936, suicide was still very much a taboo, but also easily to become sensationalised by the press. So this really gives you a sense of the scandal that was going to impact on the family.
Wow.
I've got another document here.
Oh, yes. Gresham, change name, it says on the front. Whew. I, the undersigned Ray Diana Gresham, do hereby renounce and abandon the name of Rachel Dinah Gershon, and in lieu thereof assume the name of Ray Diana Gresham. Wow. This document is dated the 29th of July, 1936. So that's just 3 weeks after Samuel killed himself. That is fast moving. It does make sense of the mystery of when the name changed from Gershon to Gresham happened, and assumed it was sort of more to do with anglicising to hide our Jewishness, but actually it was just to try and turn over a new leaf and outrun this scandal. I was aware that he had killed himself, but again, no idea the sort of the lengths that it was reported on, or the wide reach of the story. That's all complete news. I don't know. I think that must be testament to some really extraordinary shielding work going on from Ray to protect her daughters, and then her daughters to protect my mum.
Over a year after Samuel's death, the insurance claim that had been made following the Gershon robbery was settled.
Sam's death was, you know, the act of a man in a situation that he found too desperate to contemplate anymore. Ray picked herself up and moved on with her life. I've always been surrounded by strong women in my life, and it's fascinating and exciting to find that there was maybe the strongest of all of them was this woman I knew almost nothing about, who really, you know, Ray really set the tone and paved the way and allowed everybody to come after her to have that same strength by you know, absorbing so much of the damage of this event and sort of choosing to bear that burden herself. As much as this is about the tragedy and the extreme fallibility of one of my male ancestors, it's also the story of the triumph of all the women that followed him.
Daniel's father, Alan, grew up in County Down, Northern Ireland. Daniel's now heading to the family hometown of Banbridge, 30 miles outside Belfast.
It's very nice to be here. It's very nice to be about to find out more about my dad's side of the family, because I don't know very much. I had a great-great-uncle, Ernie, who went off in the First World War. When I did a film called My Boy Jack that was all set in the First World War, I kept a picture of him in my trailer as just a sort of little, you know, personal kind of connection to the period. And I believe he had 3 brothers, so there were 4 of them that went off together. But yeah, I don't know if they all came back, if none came back, or certainly what their experiences were out there. I have no idea. My Auntie Linda, she is a repository of lots of family information, so I think she'll be a very good starting point.
Daniel's Aunt Linda now lives just outside Banbridge, a few miles from her childhood home.
Great to see you.
Good to see you.
Great to
Thank
see
you
you.
so much for doing this.
Right, come in. Yes, come ahead.
Here it is now, isn't it?
So it is, yeah. Daniel, I've looked at a few photographs for you.
Oh, yes, please.
So I'm going to start off with this one here,
Oh,
which
wow.
shows you as a very young baby with Granny Elsie
Trying to eat her
trying
face.
to eat her face. Do you recognise this lady?
Is that Granny Elsie's mum?
Yeah. And this is a photograph of you with...
Oh, wow. My great-grandmother, yeah.
That's right. Her first name was Florence, but all members of her family always called her Flo.
Okay. I didn't know that I'd met her. I'm really glad that I met her. Even if I don't have a memory of it, I'm really glad that we did.
This one here is interesting because this one shows Flo's mummy and daddy. So Elizabeth and Tommy are your great-great-grandmother and grandfather.
Wow.
Yeah. This is a photograph of your great-great-uncle Ernie.
Wow.
He was very handsome,
He wasn't he? Yeah.
Ernie McDowell. And he was Flo's brother.
Right.
She had 4 brothers who all served in World War I. This is your great-great-uncle Jimmy.
Jimmy, okay.
Was the eldest son. And this is Joe. So this is your great-great-uncle Joe.
Right.
And that's Edmund. He was the youngest of the boys.
Huh.
And that's Ernie.
That's amazing.
I do have something here which I think you might find very, very interesting.
I think I would, judging by what's on the envelope.
Yeah.
Original letters.
Yeah. These letters, Daniel, are from your great-great-uncle Ernie.
Oh, wow. I'm going to be very, very careful with this. Make sure I've got it all.
These have been in the family for a very long time. They were given to your great-granny Flo, and she looked after them and treasured them dearly for many years.
So honoured to even be touching these. Oh, well, thank you so much, Linda.
You are very, very welcome. And it's just a privilege to be able to pass them on to you, Daniel.
Daniel's great-great-grandparents, Thomas and Elizabeth McDowell, had 10 children. The youngest was Daniel's great-grandmother, Flo. 4 of her brothers, Jimmy, Joe, Ernie and Edmund, served in the First World War. In Belfast, Daniel is reading his great-great-uncle Ernie's letters.
Dear Mother, I am writing in answer to your kind and welcome letter, which I received all right. We have snow lying on the ground here, as it is very cold, but don't think I be starving, for I have 3 blankets to be on at night, so I am not so bad. Just the fact that he wants him to know, like, you know, I'm fed and I'm warm, and it's not as bad as you probably think it is, even though I'm sure it was. This is about all I have to say at present from your loving son, Ernie, to my dear mother and father. So he's written a little X over all the girls' names. Annie, Sissy, Mother and Flo. My great-grandmother. It's extraordinary to see the real Ernie and get to know him a little bit through these letters. And this one is to Ernest from his mother. And it made me very happy to see that you are well. Home, I have got no more word from Joe yet. And Jim is not out of hospital, as he had... Whoa. This is very bluntly phrased. Jim is not out of hospital, as he has had to get a bit of shell took out of his head. So that's Ernie's brothers. But I hope the Lord will bring you all together once more to the same old home, to the same loving mother that you left behind. Now, I didn't expect to hear my great-great-grandmother's voice in these letters. I'm trying to work out who this one's from, because there's a lot of mentions of Ernie in it. And this is sent from Banbridge, September 2nd, 1914. My dear Ernie, My heart was sore, when I had to come into the house. But someday we will give them all a good day when we are getting married, won't we, love? From your ever-loving sweetheart. Oh, hold on. Jeannie. Wow. Someone was very keen on Ernie. That's a great letter. I mean, it's just willing this to come true by writing it. So this is another letter from Jeannie, again. No one can say to you, Ernie, that you are going with a flirt for... She's very funny, Jeannie. No one can say to you, Ernie, that you are going with a flirt, for I love you, Ernie, with all my heart, and will till death do us part. Still just so in love with him. I want to find out... I want to find out what happened to all the brothers, if possible. And I'd like to know more about him and Jeannie, because they seem sweet. And I wonder if they ever got to marry. I really hope they did, based on those letters.
To find out what more the letters can reveal, Daniel's meeting First World War historian Jessica Meyer.
Nice to meet you. Thank you so much for coming and talking to me today.
Pleasure.
Awesome. Shall we?
Shall we?
Okay. Here we go. So, these are the letters from my great-great-uncle Ernie.
There's a huge amount of personality to these letters, which is really wonderful. Collections of letters like this aren't actually that uncommon, because this is the first generation of working-class young men and young women as well, for whom education had been compulsory up to the age of 14. So they're literate. And the war is a point at which letter writing sort of takes off. They're not just sending letters, they're sending parcels.
The second parcel you sent me came in nice time, for I was sitting in a dugout and I hadn't had a smoke and wasn't very well pleased with the world in general. Oh, man. When a fellow brought me your parcel and I could have jumped with joy.
During the First World War, parcels and letters from home were a vital morale booster, regarded to be as important to soldiers' welfare as food and supplies. 2 billion letters and over 100 million parcels were sent during the course of the war, with letters taking just 2 or 3 days to reach the Western Front.
So the date on this first letter is the 9th of October, 1914. So that's incredibly early into the war.
Yes, when war breaks out in 1914. He's in the reserves. And the reserves are there to be mobilised very, very quickly. That is why so early in the war. Ernie is then sent overseas, but the records of his military service have been lost. So most of what we know about his service is from these letters.
Oh, this is a much more scrappy piece of paper that he's found somewhere. Dear Mother, I am writing you this letter to let you know that I am in England, and I am in hospital in Newcastle on Tyne with my feet. They were frostbitten.
That first winter was cold and wet, and an awful lot of men got frostbite. He recovers from frostbite. He goes home for a period of leave to recuperate, and then is sent back to his unit. And then if you take a look at this...
Oh, you were wanting to know what part of my leg I got wounded on. Well, it is the calf of my leg. It went through the muscle and missed the shin bone by 1/3 of an inch. Wow. But I will tell you all about that next Saturday. Oh, fun, next Saturday. This is all at present, dear Mother, from your loving son. So he's had frostbite now, and he's now been shot in the leg.
Yes. It would appear, interestingly enough, that when he gets that gunshot wound, that he encounters Joe, who helps him back to the regimental aid post.
Wow.
And if you look at this...
I wish Joe was home, for he is a good fellow. I was so very sorry when he left me in the dressing station. It was dark when he was carrying me. He had to jump backwards across a drain with me on his back. I thought he would have fell in, but he didn't, and he got himself gathered all right. Wow.
It's not entirely clear whether they were in the same unit, but they were both serving in the same regiment.
Yeah, it gives you a real sense of, brothers looking out for each other in a very tough situation.
We've got a letter from Ernest's mother, your great-great-grandmother, which is what makes this collection really quite special. And then the other thing we have, which is really unusual, these letters from Jeannie, which are lovely. They're
I
so
love them.
passionate.
They really are. They're just like old, what I imagine love letters to be. I love you all the time. I love you, Ernie, with a love that will never die.
So even in the midst of war, life goes on.
Yeah.
Love carries on.
Yeah.
In very difficult circumstances.
It is amazing.
This is the last dated letter that we have. The latest date that we have a letter from.
Okay. 28th of May, 1916. My dear mother and father, I am writing you these few lines, hoping they will find you all well. From your loving son, Ernie, to my dear mother and father, bye-bye. And tell Flo I don't forget about the halfpenny I owe her. But that is great that he's still, like, remembering a debt to his youngest sister.
He's written so regularly for nearly 2 years.
And then they just stop.
And then they just stop.
Oh dear. That doesn't bode well.
Back in his family's hometown of Banbridge, Daniel hopes he can discover what happened to his great-great-uncle Ernie and his brothers.
It's hard to believe that someone would just stop writing halfway through a war, especially somebody who seemed so dedicated to keeping in touch with all of his family. I imagine that he might have, died in combat. Oh, okay, this is a roll of honor. To the glory of God and in proud and loving memory of all the following men from this parish who, in response to the call of their king and country, laid down their lives in the Great War, 1914 to 1919. Yeah. There's Ernie. Ernest McDowell. So none of the other brothers are there, though. So I assume that means Ernie was the only one who got killed.
To find out more about Ernie and his brothers, Daniel is meeting genealogist Fiona Fitzsimons.
I've learned that Ernie did, in fact, die during the war. Do you know anything about the circumstances of his death?
This is a letter written by somebody who was there with Ernie at the moment that he died. And he sent it to your great-great-grandmother.
Oh, wow.
It's very old.
Yeah. This is from Rifleman James O'Brien. And it says, Mrs. McDowell, as far as I can tell you, the truth about your dear beloved son, we were just after arriving in the trenches, and your boy and 2 more chaps from Belfast was going into a dugout to take off their packs when a shell landed, which killed the 3 of them. I'm very sorry to say none of them did live to say a word to anyone. I had thought that maybe he was dying in some big battle, but it was just a random shell. I think I'm after telling you the very truth about all now, for which I am only too willing to give any broken-hearted mother, as I am the only son myself, and I know the way my own mother do feel. Yours, etc., James O'Brien. That's extraordinary. He definitely seems to want to reassure Elizabeth that Ernie didn't suffer. Some of the particularly affecting letters that I read were from Ernie's girlfriend, Jeannie, and I was wondering, she seemed pretty devoted to Ernie in all those letters. So do we know anything about what happened to her?
We do. We found a record of what happened to Jeannie from the parish registers of this church.
Marriage solemnised at the Church of the Holy Trinity. Oh wow, so yeah, they got married here.
Mm-hmm.
Ernest McDowell and Jeannie Barlow, is that? Barlow.
And look at the date.
February 9th?
14th.
February 14th. Oh, February 14th. February 14th, 1915.
So real sweethearts. It was while Ernie was on leave. He spent the greater part of 1915 in Ireland.
Right.
First of all, when he was recuperating from frostbite, and then later on after he was wounded and again was returned to Ireland.
It does make me really happy that they were able to have that year together and, yeah, were able to just be a young couple for a little while before he had to go back off. Do you know what else happened to the brothers?
Jimmy, the oldest, settled in Belfast, but the other two brothers who returned, Joseph and Edmund, settled here in Banbridge.
Yeah, obviously it's tragic to lose one son. Any amount of children is, you know, I can't even imagine that. But I'm pleased for my great-great-grandmother that at least 3 of her sons came back. To have made a World War I film and, you know, played at being a soldier in the trenches, you know, I definitely feel a lot more connected to all those stories now that I've kind of learned what my own family went through. And suddenly realising why, out of all the brothers, Ernie's name was the one that made it down to me, because he was this son that went and didn't come back. To find Elizabeth's letters to Ernie just give such an insight into what it would have been like to have your children leave for the war. And just to find out how much love there is in my family. You know, a lot of very sad things have happened to various parts of my family. But I can't be sad about it because everyone was really loved. And ultimately, that means that the time they had on Earth, even if it ended prematurely and sadly, was, you know, was worth having.